Jai Hind, everyone. The MOU that was signed in between Iran and USA has not been effective for even 15 days. And the reports are surfacing that Iran has started reconstructing the facilities which were destroyed by the US and the Israeli strikes early this year. So, is this war now moving into a phase wherein something cannot be stopped? A war that shook the entire world has now starting hitting the roadblocks. A ceasefire that has been manufactured by various countries, a ceasefire wherein multiple nations have come forward to take the credit. But what essentially is the result of this ceasefire, wherein the MOU that has been signed has now been violated within 15 days? Now, one thing is for sure that Iran is in no mood to be dominated by the US and the entire lobby supporting the US. So, now moving ahead into this news, new satellite images that have been analyzed by CNN and the Institute for Science and International Security have uh, appeared to show that Iran has been rebuilding the underground nuclear facilities that were damaged by the US airstrikes earlier this year. Now, this raises fresh questions over Iran's commitment to its agreement that was signed by Washington in the last month. These satellite images captured between June and early July have shown fresh construction activity at the Taleghan-2 underground facility inside the Parchin military complex. So the bigger question here is Iran going nuclear again? Now, this is the bigger question, and this is something that entire world must come forward to address this. Now, according to the Institute for Science and International Security, the images that have been shown now indicate that Iran has moved beyond initial damage assessment and debris removal and has begun permanent repair and reconstruction work at these sites. Now, when we see the Iranian nuclear program that started in 1950s, and it has been almost an year that various disputes had started to take place, and since early this year the war has been a regular going affair, something that has disturbed the stability of the entire world. Now, moving ahead, and let us see what is Taleghan 2. Now, this Taleghan 2 is located inside the Parchin military complex, which is southeast of Tehran, and it is one of Iran's largest military industrial complexes. Now, why was this base established? Okay, before moving into these recent news, if all of us remember, last year also, when the conflict has started to arise, around the same time, the first point that had triggered the entire conflict was again this place, Taleghan 2. Okay. Moreover, it was only from the news that had started to come up from the reconstruction, the building up of concrete structures at Taleghan was something that had disturbed the US as well as the Israel. So it was around the same time that the news came from this very complex, and now again this complex is in news barely 15 days after the memorandum that has been signed between US and Iran. Now, this facility is for high explosive testing and nuclear weapons research, okay? And that has been historically linked to the Project Ahmad, which was Iran's secret nuclear weapons program from early 2000s, okay? So, it was in 2015, okay, that international committees had come forward to solve this. Iran had agreed to limit enrichment in exchange for sanctions and reliefs. But it was again in 2018, President Trump withdrew the US from this deal. Iran had responded progressively. Iran has responded by progressively breaching the enrichment limits, and from 3.67%, they firstly raised it to 20%, and further they took it to 60% enrichment. And it was by 2025 that the IAEA had estimated Iran had approximately 450 kgs of uranium enriched to almost 60%, and that's near the weapon grade. Now the stage was set for conflict. Okay, so it was in last year that these things had happened, and again these probabilities, these possibilities have again started to show up. Now, when we see the new satellite evidences that have been assessed in between June and July, okay, June 12, the activity observed was 3 bomb impact holes have been temporarily covered with dirt. Okay. In June 18, trucks plus large crane have arrived and debris clearing process had started to take place. In June 20, rubble was cleared from the surrounding areas. On June 22, it was noticed that the fresh concrete was poured to reinforce the southeast corner, and temporary screening covers were also installed. Now, this is something that has raised the concern. On July 7th, steel rebar mesh installation has been seen, and permanent reconstruction has also been observed at this place. Clear? So, permanent reconstruction is now underway. Now, CNN, in collaboration with the Institute for Science and International Security, okay, has obtained exclusive satellite imagery from Ventor technology. So, from temporary fixes to permanent rebuilding, that too in weeks. Now, this essentially shows that how the long-term commitment is now being seen. Okay, now this significant activity was seen. Okay, and it indicates Iran's commitment to repair and restore the site. Now, this is the analysis of the international organization that has taken place. Okay, so now when we deep dive into this, okay, and try to drive the entire discussion, we can understand that this Taleghan-2 is located inside the Parchin military complex southeast of Tehran, and this is one of the Iran's largest and most sensitive military industrial complexes. Now, here Iran produces and stores almost of their warheads, missile engines, and other weapon systems. Israel has previously claimed that the facility was used to develop advanced explosives and conduct sensitive experiments associated with the Project Amat. Now, this is now when we look at the satellite images that have been shown, okay, from June 12 until July 7, okay, we have seen that the permanent reconstruction has started to take place. Okay, and this also indicates the breach of the memorandum that had been signed. Okay, now when we also look at the broader construction activity, okay, so beyond Taleghan-2, okay, multiple sites have been affected. It is not just Taleghan-2 that has been in news. Okay, we have seen that multiple sites have been prioritized under this. Okay, so Iran is prioritizing selective restoration, and now it seems that Iran has been focusing on the most sensitive sites first. Okay, and gradually they would move on to the other sites as well. Okay, so at the Pickaxe Mountain, okay, there has been an unmonitored underground complex in Iran's Zagros mountain. Now, this has been an underground complex. Okay, and satellite images from late June have showed the vehicle traffic on the roads that have been leading to the underground complex, okay, around the western tunnels. Okay, at the Tabriz Air Base, okay, it has been noticed that runway crater has been filled with concrete. Okay, missile bases at Tabriz and Kermanshah, infrastructure has been cleared and has now been restored. At Natanz, access routes that were destroyed, okay, and essentially no unusual activity has been seen. Okay, Moreover, at Natanz, the access routes to underground enrichment halls have not been restored yet. Okay, so this is why the uh, officials, okay, from the International Institute has now been observing that Iran has started to prioritize the reconstruction and rebuilding at these sites. Okay, at Isfahan, no activity has been detected as of June 29, and tunnels are buried. At Fordo, earth and rock barriers have been added, and no unusual activity has been seen. Clear? So we are seeing a selective pattern here. Okay, a selective restoration that has been taking place. Iran is prioritizing the most sensitive sites which were linked to the weapons research while leaving the better known enrichment facilities that have been damaged. Okay, now this entire development tells us something important about Iran's longer commitment and Iran's priorities. Okay, now when we have a look at the MOUs, okay, everything that started with the initiatives of various leaders, okay, now the Islamabad Memorandum. Now Iran has committed not to procure or develop nuclear weapons. It says to maintain the status quo across nuclear program 60-day freeze on nuclear activities. Now this 60-day has to be observed because if these reports are proved to be correct, this will be a direct breach of this timeline. Okay. US refrains from imposing new sanctions during the negotiations and pursues diplomatic solutions. Okay, so we have essentially understood, okay, that now the core question that is arising is that does rebuilding violate these activities? Okay, so if we come across the question that if this rebuilding is violating this, so activity at Taleghan-2 that has been observed from June 22nd to July 7, both have been observed within the 60 days MOU period. Okay. The high traffic at the Pickaxe Mountain has been observed on June 21. That is again within that 60-day timeline. US officials now believe that Iran has violated both the substance and spirit of this agreement. Okay. Moreover, Trump declared the ceasefire over at the NATO summit in Ankara on 8th of July. So the 60-day talk window is ongoing, okay, but the tensions have started to escalate. Okay, so we have now understood that this is the bigger problem, okay, and both at Taleghan at the and also at the Pickaxe Mountain, the activities that have been observed are clear proof that Iran is now onto something. US officials have clearly been saying that Iran has violated the agreement. Okay, and it was then, if we quote the US president, he had also said that the memorandum signed with Iran has now ended, and he has called that all the negotiations that have taken place with Iran are now dead. So, if we go by the Trump's word, it effectively means that the ceasefire is now dead. Okay. Moving further, what Iran says. Iran says that this program is purely civilian and peaceful and strikes are aggression. Reconstruction is repair and not development. Clear? So these are the Iranian claims. Okay. Now we can also see that Iran maintains that its program is purely civilian and peaceful and that the strikes against it are aggression. Okay. And they have been regularly arguing that all this repair is going on. There is no new development. Okay. But the bigger question is that what Iran still possesses. Okay. So if we talk about the retained capabilities, okay, now the current status, okay, around 440 kgs of uranium enriched to 60%, okay, is something that Iran still possesses. Okay, according to the IAEA, approximately 42 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium is theoretically enough to produce one atomic bomb. If it is enriched further to 90%, that is enough material for approximately 10 nuclear bombs. So, if we see the knowledge, the expertise, ballistic missiles, and the proxies who are active in Iran, so Crucially, we can say that Iran's knowledge and expertise cannot be bombed away. The scientists, the engineers, the institutional knowledge entirely has been retained. Okay. Iran also has got ballistic missiles, regional proxies like Hezbollah, Houthis. They have always leveraged these situations. Okay. So, in this thing, we can see that Iran faces a few constraints also. Okay. There have been domestic protests, there have been economic pressure from the sanctions, international isolation, and now Iran also fears a full scale war. So, if we understand Iran's capabilities and the constraints, then we can understand that Iran might also have calculated everything before proceeding with all of these activities. Okay. When we talk about the international reactions and angles, the US says that Iran must never possess nuclear weapons. Military options remain on table. Door-to-door diplomacy remains open, but negotiation cannot continue while Iran attacks civilians. Netanyahu has very clearly said our policy is clear: with an agreement or without an agreement, Iran will not have nuclear weapons. Okay. Moreover, the Israeli defense minister has also said if we have to go back, we will go back with even greater force. IAEA says lost continuity of knowledge across all declared nuclear facilities, cannot verify production or inventory of centrifuges, rotors, bellows, heavy water. Only Bushehr power plant remains verifiable. Globally, China and Russia have been advocating towards diplomatic solution. Gulf states are wary of escalation and they now fear a regional arms race taking place amongst them. Okay. Bahrain at the Security Council meeting has said that Iran has become accustomed to using agreements as means of easing pressure while actions continue in the opposite direction. Okay. So now, no matter whatever the other countries are saying, but the greater risks are the regional nuclear arms race, disruption of Hormuz, and the proliferation cascade. Okay, so we can say that IAEA is now in a crisis mode. The Director General of IAEA has also said that it has been almost an year that IAEA has got no knowledge of whatever has been taking place. Okay, so we can see that in this situation, okay, every country is now worried. Okay, the risks are enormous. Okay, and in this situation, no nation in the entire world would want to get into the same situation they had been into last 3-4 months. Okay, now if we talk about the rebuilding of this, okay, first and foremost, we must understand the expert assessment that had taken place. Okay, despite massive strikes, Iran's timeline has largely remained unchanged. Okay, Iran's attitude has largely remained unchanged. Okay, in this situation, the experts now believe, okay, that Iran is now 9 to 12 months away from being able to build a nuclear weapon. Okay, so with the development that is taking place and with the capabilities, they believe that Iran can anytime build up all of these activities within a time period of next 9 to 12 months. Okay. Moreover, the Pentagon in last year also they had estimated that the June strikes had pushed Iran back to roughly 2 years. Okay, but the key findings are that despite massive strikes, Iran's breakout timeline has remained unchanged. Okay, the US physicist James Acton, okay, says that it gives 50% odds of an Iranian nuclear weapon within 3 years. Okay, and the US just lost a war to Iran as per James Acton. Okay, and he essentially says this very, very bluntly. Okay, why? Because Iran's uranium stockpile sits fully intact in tunnels which are too deep to reach. Okay, and Iran has walked away with more leverage in the nuclear talks. Okay, so even though there have been multiple scenarios in this situation, okay, there are various scenarios like the diplomatic path, limited strikes, or a full-scale war, or a nuclear breakout is something that cannot be ruled out. Okay, but there are various bigger things that the entire world is worried about. Okay, if we talk about the India's angle, okay, India still relies on the Gulf oil imports. Okay, strategic investments are at risk. Okay, regional stability are at risk, and India maintains ties with both US as well as Iran. So diplomatic ties will again have to be tested. Okay, so we can entirely understand that the energy markets are at risk. Okay, the Strait of Hormuz is a critical choke point for global oil supplies for the entire world. Okay, the NPT is at risk. If Iran gets a nuclear weapon, it could trigger a regional arms race. After Iran, it could be Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, all could pursue their own programs. Okay. Moreover, agreements without enforcements are now meaningless. The 2015 deal had fallen apart because there was no mechanism to hold Iran accountable when the US had withdrew. For India, the stakes are again particularly very high, and India again would not want to get into the similar unstable situation. Clear? So, by and large, we can understand that this is not just a Middle East crisis, it is a global crisis. Okay, so please do let me know what all are your views upon these development and these commitments which have been probably violated by Iran. So program damaged but has not been eliminated. The ceasefire seems to be fragile. Diplomacy seems to be critical, but there is huge distrust that is being tested in this current situation. Okay, so please do let me know what all are your views. These are the images that have been proving the ulterior side of Iran. Okay, moreover, currently we are offering the best offer. Okay, the UPSC courses at StudyIQ IAS are available from the starting price of 7,999. Okay, and our GS Foundation batches are available in English language. Okay, all of our courses are based upon the SMART model of preparation, which allows you to prepare in the best possible way. Okay, you just need to use the code SRM Live to avail this discount, and please do subscribe to this courses very fast because this is a limited period offer. Okay, so this was all from my side today. We'll see you all in the next session. Jai Hind.